Twitch TV has become a disgusting, tawdry gimmick site. An ad-filled cesspool that renders the talented content creators on the site unwatchable. This was a site that was built by guys like IdrA, who we're watching right now. This is an old school IdrA VOD from early 2011. This is in the period where he was still playing in GSLs, and this was in IdrA was around the peak of his powers still. Approaching the end of 2011 is when he would fall off a little bit, because if we look at his career arc, he was winning the most tournaments and the most dangerous at the end of Brood War in 2010, into the StarCraft 2 beta, and into the first year of Wings. His best and highest level coincided with Zerg being the weakest. Remember, IdrA played Zerg in Star 2 and Brood War Macro Terran. IdrA, of course, known as an exceptionally outspoken, brash person who was not afraid to bad-manner people, run his mouth, or tell the people he was playing what he thought of them. And one thing that I love about like these old school screen recordings is they can just really take you back based on the UI. Look at that old school Justin TV UI, 8,800 viewers, and Rebecca Black's Twitter page on one of the tabs. Man, if that doesn't take you back, I don't know what will. Look at this, CombatEx, first up for the Graken. Wasif CombatEx Khan, the aggressive, trash-talking villain of the StarCraft 2 scene. If you think of IdrA as a villain, there's some truth to that, but in reality, I think he's more of an anti-hero. He's an honorable macro player that went out in Korea and stuck it out longer than everyone else, and he plays a style that is essentially the most skillful style you can play. Reactive macro Zerg, and he played macro Terran for God's sake in Brood War, which is the hardest thing in all of gaming. So I don't think he's really a true villain, despite the fact, as we see some banter going on right out the gate, which I'm not going to be able to commentate all the banter, so I would just encourage you guys to read their chatting back and forth as you listen to my commentary. And we see IdrA talking about CombatEx losing to Chill. Chill was a guy like me who was good at the game, but like definitely below pro gamer level, and like the top GM, like A rank back in the day on IC Cup, was definitely not A rank. And CombatEx ran his mouth to Chill on a forum. Chill was a caster, and Chill was like, fuck it, I'll play you CombatEx. And they played a best of 5 that Day 9 hilariously commentated. And CombatEx cheesed his ass off in all the games, and Chill beat him 3-1. And Chill was not seen as a guy who was even really a serious player. He was seen as a commentator first. And CombatEx was a guy who, back in the Brood War days and into the early Star 2 days, was making guide videos on his YouTube channel. These are actually really good guide videos if you're interested in learning how to cheese and abuse. Yes, I'm being serious. And I think overall CombatEx had a huge positive contribution to the StarCraft 2 scene. I made this video called I Miss CombatEx, and he left a comment on it saying like he liked the video. And even though he's just a total asshole in game, just like a total mask off rodent, he'll say like over the line stuff, he cheeses and abuses. Early in Wings of Liberty, he would always stream snipe people. Stream sniping is whenever you see someone queue up and you're the same MMR as them, and you queue up and you get a game with them. Then that's a stream snipe. It's a stream cheat if you keep watching and like see what they're doing on the stream while you play, which stream sniping is not good. It's not the end of the world though to like try to like snipe a game off someone. But stream cheating is obviously terrible. I mean, absolutely awful. Like, it's just as bad as legit hacking. And CombatEx's career arc was he was around in Brood War making videos, got embarrassed by Chill, beat Parting, and took a game off Parting rather at WCG in 2012, and then sort of retired until HOTS. Came back a little bit, but ultimately decided to just go into the private sector and, as many people do, leave the StarCraft scene, but he produced a plethora of great guide videos, and we can see that the banter between IdrA and CombatEx is pretty much going to be constant. Both of these guys love to talk shit, and the big distinction between them, like, IdrA is definitely more of an anti-hero, like I was saying. CombatEx is just like straight up more of a villain. He's way more bad manner, he's way more brash, he's way nastier, he cheeses more. not only does he cheese, but he like blatantly advocates for some of the most cheesy and ridiculous and abusive play imaginable. I actually think CombatEx thinks about the game in a really interesting way, and as far as Protoss players goes, he's the sort of player that you do not want to play against in terms of style, because this guy would go Nexus first, get a little bit ahead after a 2-base push, 2-base pressure with sentries, then double expand and take a corner base. Out of every StarCraft player I've ever seen, I've never seen someone aggressively expand like CombatEx. The way that Combat does it, predicated off of and behind aggression, and just the brazen, abusive nature of his expansion patterns. Combat was famous for doing this bit where when he would be dealing the killing blow to his opponents, he would say, "I'm on 6 base," like as he would be killing their third, and it would be like, 6 base, how's that possible? Well, it's because like he took a quick third, a super quick fourth, and then like as he attacked, he sent a probe out and double expanded. Combat really understood the mechanics of like really sharp linear play. One of the things that he was famous for, hilariously, was this clip on Katz's YouTube channel, where the clip is called "CombatEx Scouts Major by letting Major scout him." And like this is another thing Combat does, is he'll like duplicitously pause the game like to bad manner it. This is like the difference between like being a little bit bad manner and like being like a real dickhead, is like doing stuff like that. Because like he obviously didn't need the pause and was just gonna like sit there and waste everyone's time. But Combat, people would often like think of these two guys, or like they wouldn't necessarily loop them together, but like if you were to look at the comments of this video, it would be like, oh, CombatEx versus IdrA, I want both of them to lose. Now that wasn't necessarily the consensus sentiment, but IdrA was a total anti-hero. He was extremely polarizing, and people were either very for IdrA or very against him. There was very little in between. Like CombatEx was the same, except like he was less good at the game and way more of an asshole, like truth be told. They were both brash, they were both outspoken, they were both not afraid to tell their opponents what they thought about them. We can see constant conversation here from Combat Easy. This boring, forgettable map, Typhon Peaks, that probably people who played it don't even remember. This was a common theme of terrible Blizzard maps, where they would be small, congested, shitty, and boring, and also have rocks somewhere near the third. You saw that IdrA had to wheel out way towards the middle of the map rather, to take his third base. And this was a common thing. This happened on like Tal'Darim Altar. There were rocks on the third of that map, which eventually got patched, but like the idea in this matchup, in any Zerg matchup except ZvZ, is Zerg wants to take a quick third. So if there's rocks on the third, Zerg has to make attacking units just to take a third. Look at the Legacy meta now, where it's like the Zerg third versus Terran is insanely fast. That's how the entire meta evolved. So whenever you think about the fact that, okay, there used to be like rocks on thirds, or like rocks in the way of bases, or look at, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, look at Combat just chimping out in all caps, just completely, like, he was an animal, and like I love him for it. But whenever we watch this game, CombatEx versus IdrA, it's just sort of funny to consider, like, people viewed IdrA as this, like, I mean, he was the bad boy of StarCraft. He was one of the most popular and compelling people in esports history for a reason, and it wasn't just because his mechanics were god tier. You could be like me and you wanted to see him win because you appreciated his style and his wit, or you could be someone who thought he was a jerk and wanted to see him lose. The point is that he was polarizing. That's what you need to remember whenever you think about IdrA, and like, he was very compelling. This was a guy who, that whether you loved or hated him, he brought in the viewers, like people were gonna watch. And CombatEx was just more of like a straight up villain. CombatEx was very cantankerous, and we were talking about stream sniping and stream cheating earlier, neither of which I advocate for, but obviously stream cheating is way worse. CombatEx had beef with Jeff In Control Robinson. That was his biggest rival out of everyone, and CombatEx beefed with most people because he was pretty much a dick to everyone. But it was In Control specifically that he disliked the most, and the feeling was mutual. Jeff hated CombatEx. One of the first games I ever casted on this channel, literally like 10 years ago, was one time In Control tweeted out, like, I 1v1 CombatEx with money on the line, here's the replay pack with the smiley face, and then another post beneath it, note, the one game not included was 10-10 Gate on Ohana, and like the game, the series that he lost to Chill in Brood War, Combat would run his mouth and lose to his rival in 3-1 fashion. IdrA wasting force fields here, pressuring the third base, and this was the meta of Protoss vs Zerg. In the Wings of Liberty era, it's all about the force field. The gimmick Ravager does not exist. The Lurker does not exist. The Swarm Host does not exist. This is what games look like. Zerg trying to pressure in the mid game, and the Protoss player teching up into Splash. Now, almost always it was Colossus. You'd make a couple of mortals on the way there, maybe an obs or two. Most NA Terrans skipped obs. That was a hilarious thing I saw IdrA and Artosis laugh about, like even in the beta. And it's still true, people don't make enough observers. And what IdrA's doing here is keeping his units on the high ground to pressure, because he knows if he commits with his army, it's going to get cut in half and butchered. So he's running just enough army down there to have Combat throw a force field down, and then he's attacking him from the high ground. Note the creep superhighway with overlords. Note the observer by the army. Combat is a guy who loves to cheese and abuse. As you see the first Colossus there, Combat loves to go DT, loves to go surprise Stargate. So you do not want to skip Observer or Overseers versus this guy. And Combat's guide videos are really useful, and he had such a brash, obnoxious, in-your-face style that even though a lot of people liked him, like we're watching this video now and I've already said that like I liked him, and I literally made a video in the past called I Miss CombatEx. And like, yeah, he was a dick, but guess what? Like the scene needs a villain. Like he was funny and charismatic and interesting. And the fact that he was like such an ass made him more interesting to root for or against. Like, what do you think is more entertaining, personality-wise, CombatEx versus IdrA or any StarCraft match that's occurred in the last 6 years? Like, straight up question. Like, one thing the StarCraft community lacks now are like big personalities. And a lot of the big personalities that we had are either gone or are sort of semi-retired. As you see two Colossus out here for Combat, IdrA trying to snipe them down, but this is the classic Wings of Liberty ZvP dichotomy, where once you get that second range Colossus, the Zerg player really starts to fall off ground army wise, and they'll start to make Corruptors. We can see IdrA Spire timing there, starting his Infestation Pit. Creep spread phenomenal here for the Macro Machine, and this is one thing that he would always do in his ZvPs, especially if he was doing like a Hydra timing, was he would make a creep highway to the front of their base. I absolutely love to see this, and this was something that even into like the modern or Heart of the Swarm era was not really used appropriately. This was something that like in a plethora of different scenarios and build orders could have been used. Like the fact of the matter is it's sort of a pain to set up, and if you fail your push, then you have all those overlords out mid-map. But one thing I love about StarCraft is you can see the personality of people shine through in the game. And here we can see IdrA's trying to attack mid-map. The priority here is to get force field energy and then to kill the sentries and Colossus. You essentially don't care about the Zealot Stalker. Back in this era, charge was 200-200, so you wouldn't see people get charged as fast as you would now. Remember, no shield battery at this time, no Nexus recall at this time. The only recall was on the mothership, which is how it should be. So IdrA's maxed here, and he has a Corruptor army, and I know the quality is going to shit. This is from early 2011. IdrA's probably still using fucking XSplit, which was a horseshit program that preceded OBS. IdrA trying to target down the Colossi, but at this point Combat has 4. And he gets that Colossus, so note the actual back and forth. Combat couldn't just walk back into a shield battery, LOL. And there's this weird moment when you're Zerg where you make a big Roach Hydra army, but you need a plethora of drones as DTs start to ravage the side bases here for IdrA. IdrA making spores and spawns, trying to recover that spawner base, bringing his main army over with Overseers. But it was this just brutal dynamic of, okay, he has Colossus, I'm going to need Corruptors. Well, how many Corruptors can I make to actually burst down his Colossus? And it was this insufferable question of, well, Jesus Christ, like, if he has 4 Colossus, I'm going to need like 15 Corruptors to burst them down in an effective amount of time. well shit, at that point I've already lost the army, or I've committed too many resources to air army. Like whenever you would make more than, say, 10 corruptors, you would have all these useless corruptors in your army as we launch into part 2 of the game here. And just don't complain about the quality, guys. It's literally from early 2011. We can see IdrA here using the terrible and jokish corrupt ability, which was a complete joke. And notice he's shift A-moving up on the Colossus. And IdrA lost that bottom right base, but managed to retake it. And here we see IdrA just flooding Roach Hydra. He sees, okay, I've reset his Colossus count, even if he's going double Robo Colossus. And all the corrupt ability did was made it where the unit took 20% extra damage. All you would ever see it used on was Colossus, really, or Voids before they died to Voids. Ling screaming in here, it's pure Hydra Ling, not Roach. So if you're not aware, Hydra Ling is the counter to gateway units. Like if you know you're going to be, well, maybe not in the current meta, but back in Wings of Liberty, if you were going to get gateway unit all in, like Blink Stalkers was a real popular one, you could mass Hydra Ling. Now the crux of the issue here is the Colossus counters both Hydra and Ling. So if you went Hydra Ling and they went Colossus, which was really standard, then you were just going to be boned. IdrA transferring more workers down to bot left as he's dealing the killing blow. And note, he can pump pure Hydra Ling here because he has so many corruptors. Combat Colossus count has been reset, so the crux of the issue is that Colossus count. The fact of the matter is, as soon as a Colossus comes out, IdrA's going to kill it. The only thing Combat can really do here is get into Storm. And back in the Wings of Liberty era, if you didn't open Storm, if you opened Robo, then you weren't ever really going to make it to Storm if you were being crushed out of your Colossus transition. Combat trying to come back into game with this DT harass, but IdrA hammers the third base, stealing at the killing blow, and now he's threatening the Forge, a Twilight, and a Gate. Moving everything in, and losing this bottom right base could be annoying for the Kraken. And it's amazing. The thing about Combat that always stood out to me was like, he was so shameless and mindless in his criticisms, and he would just run his mouth constantly no matter what. Like no matter how bad the game was or like what mistake he made, like he just didn't have an off switch, which is like part of what made him such an animal. But I'm going to do another part of this video, but I'm not going to make it an hour. So I hope you like this one. Like, comment, sub, click the playlist. Say easy.